In less than 24 hours, the carefully constructed illusion of absolute power evaporated into the crisp June air. What Camilla just realized behind closed doors at Royal Ascot is that the crown she wears is far heavier and far more temporary than she ever allowed herself to believe. As the royal carriages glided down the famous turf, a silent, devastating execution of power was unfolding, not in the headlines, but at the security checkpoints and side entrances of the royal enclosure. It was a visual humiliation designed with clinical precision, a public reminder that while she may sit next to the king, her bloodline remains completely on the outside. This is the story of a bloodless institutional coup, a masterclass in the weaponization of administrative protocol that has quietly dismantled the Queen's multi-decade strategy. By the end of this video, you will understand the exact mechanics of the secret power grab Camilla attempted to pull off as King Charles navigated his ongoing health crisis, how Prince William intercepted the paper trail, and the ruthless, silent retaliation that left her family stripped of their unearned access. This is a forensic look at the devastating realization that despite 30 years of flawless manipulation, the woman who survived the shadow of Diana has finally run out of moves, facing an heir who kills with a pen rather than a sword. To understand the sheer scale of the shock that reverberated through the palace walls this week, one must first look at the towering illusion of absolute power Camilla had spent the last 3 decades constructing. For 30 years, her journey was defined by an unparalleled patient calculation, moving methodically from the vilified outsider to the anointed queen consort. She had successfully navigated the moral outrage of a nation systematically erased the lingering institutional presence of Princess Diana, and reshaped the king's inner circle to ensure her total administrative dominance. In the minds of her inner circle, her coronation was not just a personal victory, it was the establishment of a new dynasty, an era where her non-royal children, Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes, would finally be elevated from the periphery into the permanent fabric of British royalty. In the months leading up to this summer, that sense of untouchable security had reached its absolute zenith. With King Charles facing severe health challenges and scaling back his public duties, Camilla increasingly stepped into the vacuum, effectively becoming the face and the voice of the institution. She operated with the quiet confidence of someone who believed she had completely mastered the monarch, assuming that his absolute reliance on her psychological support translated into permanent institutional authority. Her children began appearing at high-profile events with increasing frequency, subtly blurring the lines between private family and public state functions, basking in the reflected glory of a crown they did not inherit. Camilla truly believed that the system had no choice but to absorb her family, that the sheer momentum of her current position would force the institution to grant her children the permanent status, security and prestige she felt they deserved. But that supreme confidence ultimately became the very trap that ensnared her. The trigger for this quiet warfare was a hidden, highly strategic maneuver involving the logistics of Royal Ascot, the crown jewel of the royal social calendar, where status is broadcast to the entire world through visual proximity to the sovereign. Utilizing her office and the temporary administrative vacancy left by the king's reduced oversight, Camilla attempted to orchestrate a subtle but profound shift in protocol. She directed her staff to alter the traditional guest allocations, quietly transferring sovereign privileges and official royal carriage seating to her own children and their immediate circle. It was a calculated attempt to present a united alternative royal family to the international press, a visual normalization of her bloodline as co-equals to the House of Windsor, designed to set a precedent that could not be easily reversed. What Camilla failed to account for, however, was the cold, unblinking vigilance of Prince William. As the Prince of Wales and the undisputed future CEO of the monarchy, William has spent years silently cataloging the creeping influence of the Parker Bowles faction within the palace walls. When the logistical and security briefs for Royal Ascot landed on his desk for routine sign-off, what looked like a standard administrative update immediately revealed itself to be a total colonization of the royal space. William's team uncovered the paper trail, the quiet adjustments to the sovereign's personal guest list, the unauthorized redistribution of highly restricted passes, and the deliberate displacement of traditional royal figures to make way for Camilla's family. For William, this was not a simple matter of family scheduling. It was a direct existential threat to the legacy of his mother, Princess Diana, and a staggering exploitation of a vulnerable king's authority. The moral outrage within the prince's camp was profound, but it was met not with public anger, but with a chilling, calculated restraint. The real offense lay in the commercial desperation that seemed to drive this maneuver. The realization that Camilla was rushing to weaponize her temporary absolute power to secure commercial and social leverage for her children before the inevitable transition of the crown. William recognized that allowing Tom and Laura to occupy the sovereign's inner circle at a major global event would signal a dilution of the monarchy's dignity, transforming a centuries-old institution into a vehicle for private family advancement. The response from the heir to the throne would not involve shouting matches or leaked tabloid tirades. Instead, it would be an exercise in the silent, ruthless deployment of constitutional and administrative power. On the morning of the event, the trap snapped shut with devastating administrative precision. When Camilla's family arrived, expecting the customary seamless transition through the sovereign's gate, they were met not with bowing courtiers, but with the cold reality of revoked access. The passes that had been quietly slipped into their names had been systematically flagged and cancelled by the Lord Chamberlain's office, operating under direct quiet instructions from the Prince of Wales. There were no scenes, no public arguments, just a polite, unyielding redirection. Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes were quietly but firmly directed away from the royal enclosure's exclusive sovereign path and forced to enter through standard public-facing side doors completely separated from the official royal procession. That detail matters immensely because in the hyper-symbolic world of the British monarchy, visual geography is everything. To be removed from the sovereign's carriage and relegated to the side doors is a public strip mining of status, a nonverbal declaration that you are an outsider looking in. From her vantage point within the lead royal carriage, Camilla was forced to witness the immediate public unraveling of her grand strategy. The very people she had spent years trying to position as the new royal elite were visible to the cameras and the aristocracy as mere spectators completely detached from the true center of power. The illusion of her absolute control was shattered in full view of the global press, not by a scandal but by the rigid enforcement of protocol. As the afternoon progressed, the psychological weight of this institutional retaliation settled heavily over the Queen. She was trapped in the ultimate contradiction, sitting at the absolute pinnacle of social prestige next to the King, while simultaneously realizing she possessed no real power to protect her own children from public marginalization. The most terrifying realization, however, was yet to come. When Camilla turned to King Charles in a desperate, whispered appeal to intervene and reverse the security directives, she was met not with royal outrage on her behalf, but with a cold, devastating silence. The king, exhausted by his illness and deeply aware of the shifting tides of power, simply looked away, refusing to challenge the iron authority of his heir. In that single moment of silence, the trap was fully sealed, leaving Camilla to face the terrifying reality that the empire she thought she owned was nothing more than a borrowing from a future king who has already begun his reign from the shadows. The true significance of King Charles looking away in that carriage cannot be overstated. It was not a momentary lapse of attention, nor was it a symptom of physical fatigue. It was a profound, silent capitulation to the shifting tides of the monarchy. For decades, Charles had been Camilla's ultimate shield, defying his mother, his advisors, and the British public to place her on the throne beside him. But the reality of a sovereign facing a profound health crisis changes the psychological landscape entirely. In that devastating moment of silence, Charles acknowledged a truth that every British monarch must eventually confront. the survival of the institution always supersedes personal affection. By refusing to intervene, the king effectively signaled that the future court belongs to his heir, and that William's iron enforcement of institutional boundaries is now the absolute law of the land. This brings us to the core of what can only be described as a state of commercial desperation within Camilla's immediate circle. To the casual observer, a dispute over guest lists and carriage seating at Royal Ascot might look like minor court gossip. But that is where the story changes. In the hyper-regulated structure of the British Crown access is the ultimate currency. Camilla's frantic push to elevate her non-royal children into the sovereign's inner circle was driven by a cold, looming reality that she has kept hidden behind a veneer of royal grandeur. The undeniable truth is that despite her current title, Camilla owns absolutely nothing within the royal estate. She controls no independent royal funds, she holds no hereditary titles to pass down, and she commands zero institutional loyalty from the palace apparatus. When the king's reign eventually draws to a close, Camilla's position will undergo an immediate permanent downgrade. She will become a dowager queen, a historical title that carries immense social prestige, but absolutely zero administrative power. Her grand palaces, the sweeping estates, and the endless legions of royal staff will instantly vanish. The only property she actually owns in her own name is Ray Mill House, a modest private residence in Wiltshire that she purchased before her marriage to Charles. Every other luxury she enjoys, from the grand rooms of Clarence House to the historic corridors of Highgrove, is merely on loan from an institution that is already moving on without her. That detail matters immensely when analyzing the behavior of her children, Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes. Unlike the Windsor bloodline, they have no public funding, no official security details, and no permanent place in the state apparatus. Their social status and commercial viability are entirely dependent on their current fleeting proximity to the reigning monarch. William's team recognized that the recent attempts to integrate the Parker Bowles family into official royalty events were a calculated effort to build social capital and commercial leverage before the clock runs out. By systematically stripping them of their premium access and forcing them through the public side doors at Ascot, William did not just embarrass them, he effectively cut off their commercial oxygen, signaling to the global elite that the family of the Queen possesses no future currency in the House of Windsor. This ruthless administrative purge is not happening in a vacuum. It is the silent execution of a long-delayed revenge, a restoration of the rightful line that directly honors the legacy of Princess Diana. For decades, the shadow of Diana's institutional erasure hung heavily over the palace, as Camilla carefully dismantled her predecessor's lingering influence. But the modern institution is now anchored by a new power dynamic, one driven by the quiet endurance of Catherine, the Princess of Wales. While Catherine has spent the past months navigating her own severe health battles with uncomplaining sacrifice and dignified silence, her position as the undisputed future queen has only solidified in the hearts of the nation. William's actions at Ascot were a direct defense of his wife's future court, a cold declaration that the stage is being cleared for the rightful line and that no alternative power centers will be tolerated. The forensic proof of this shifting power dynamic is visible in the subtle, administrative updates that have quietly taken place behind palace doors over the last few weeks. Viewers notice that official royal communication channels have completely ceased amplifying the commercial projects and book releases of Camilla's children. Behind the scenes, the security registries at major royal residences have been meticulously updated, removing the open-ended, unrestricted access passes that Camilla had previously secured for her inner circle. What looked like a routine administrative update was actually a total dismantling of her empire. The institutional memory of the British monarchy is long, and the system is now correcting a historic anomaly, pushing the Parker Bowles faction back into the periphery where they legally belong. What we are witnessing is the ultimate triumph of institutional restraint over personal ambition. Camilla spent 30 years playing a flawless game of chess, surviving public vilification, navigating complex family dynamics, and ultimately reaching the absolute pinnacle of the social hierarchy. Yet, in her eagerness to secure a permanent legacy for her own bloodline, she miscalculated the cold, unyielding nature of the machine she sought to master. She forgot that the British monarchy does not operate on emotion. It operates on precedent, protocol, and power. As the summer sun sets on Royal Ascot, the new order within the House of Windsor has never been clearer. Camilla remains on the throne for now, a queen in title, but a spectator to her own decline. The future has already been claimed by Prince William and Princess Catherine, leaving the current queen to contemplate a lonely, impending exile within the walls of a palace that was never truly hers. It is a devastating lesson in the illusion of absolute power, proving that in the grand theatre of the British crown, those who attempt to rewrite the rules are eventually broken by the very system they tried to control. If you found this deep, analytical look into the shifting power dynamics of the British royal family compelling, please consider subscribing to the channel and sharing your thoughts in the comments below. What do you believe this silent transition of power means for the future of the monarchy under Prince William? Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next story.